Make sure your mics are on.
Okay.
Printer got angry.
I will now call to order the City of Sherwood Budget Committee meeting for May 16th, 2024. David, will you please conduct roll call?
Chair Strode,
Here.
Vice Chair Lana Painter. Here. Thomas Sherwood.
Here.
Paul Mayer.
Here.
Nancy Taylor.
Here.
Brian Fairbanks is absent. Matt Kaufman.
Here.
Tim Rosner.
Here.
Kim Young.
Here.
Renee Browse.
Here.
Dan Stanke.
Here.
Keith Mays.
Here.
Taylor Giles.
Here.
Doug Scott.
Here.
The first item on the agenda is election of the committee chair, and per ORS 294-414-9, the Budget Committee is required to elect the presiding officer at the first meeting when they receive the budget message. I'd like to request Chair Katie Strode to open the floor for nominations of the chair position for the fiscal year 24-25 budget cycle. And just as a reminder, committee members, please refrain from voting on the nominations until all nominations have been made and accepted and or declined. So with that, I'll open it, turn it back.
All right. Do we have any nominations for chair?
I nominate Katie Strode.
All right. Do we have any other nominations? All right. All right, we'll take a vote on it. All in favor, I do chair again, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. I will be chair again for next year.
And the next item is election of committee vice chair. I would like to request Chair Strode to open the floor for nominations of the vice chair position for the fiscal year 24-25 budget cycle.
Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Lana.
Second.
You accept?
Are we going to say anybody else?
Do we have any other nominations? Yeah. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote. All in favor of Lana vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, hearing none, Lana will serve as vice chair. All right, I'll move on to public comment. Tonight's meeting will be a working and listening session with department director presentations. We will have time for general public comment at the beginning of the meeting. If you wish to speak, please fill out the public comment form and give to the finance director. The committee chair will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed to the committee chair. Towards the end of tonight's meeting, or at next Thursday's meeting, we will have a public hearing on state shared revenue with time for public comment on the use of shared revenues. I would like to ask David Bodway, the city's finance director, if we have received any comments.
No, we have not.
All right, we'll close public comment.
Yeah, can you, 1 second, we're going to see if there's anybody potentially online.
All right, I will close public comment. And moving on to new business, we have a number of new items to cover tonight. I will now turn it over to City Manager Pro Tem Craig Sheldon.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'd first like to start off by thanking you guys for being here. I'd like to thank staff for the hard work that went into this budget. It was a collaborative approach by the senior leadership, and that's what we're presenting you tonight and next week, and if we need to, the third meeting. So instead of reading through 7 or 8 pages of the budget message that everybody's probably read, I just want to highlight a couple bullets, and then we'll turn it over to David, because a lot of stuff he's going to be talking about that is in the budget message. So I just don't want to duplicate some of that. So the 24-25 proposed budget's balanced as required by state law. This proposed budget has a 20% ending fund balance at the end of 5 years in the forecast. The proposed budget includes a 2% increase to street fees, city storm and sanitary fees, and water residential. It also includes a 3% increase for commercial customers. And that 3% commercial increase, as well as the 2% water increase, is per our water financial plan that we have done in 2021. It was for the next 5 years. That was the increases that they'd recommend following. This proposed budget includes one-time expenses again. The budget addresses the police department's career cycle career cycle planning. The proposed budget has a decrease of 1.5 FTE positions from the current budget. That was, last year you guys approved a communication marketing manager as well as a finance tech, part-time. This proposed budget does not include any new FTEs that were proposed, and there was some proposals. This budget includes the assistant city manager position authorized by the city council, but does not include the existing community service director position, as it is not sustainable to meet the 20% projected ending fund balance after the third year. Other positions not included in this proposed budget is a new police sergeant, which is not sustainable after 3 years to meet the 20% projected ending fund balance. Both positions will be, I recommend, as well as the finance director recommends, those positions be reevaluated at the end of October when we close the 23-24 budget books and take a look at what our ending fund balance is at that time. Some of those costs actually go towards projects, but there is some savings usually in the past. And David can talk a little bit about that later as we go. And then last, I believe that was it. So those are some of the highlights, and David will talk a little bit more as we go through the budget. So, have any questions?
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Can I just ask one?
Yeah, if you don't mind, turn on your mic, please.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I was on a meeting last night that
No wonder.
Okay. I know that we lost staff this year and we didn't replace staff. Will that work into helping with this deficit that you're projecting?
Deficit that I'm projecting.
Or
Can
that
you
you're-
expand on that? I'm sorry.
The deficit that you're talking about with not being able to sustain certain positions, like police chief after 3 years. Will the savings we had over this last year help at all in the future?
Yeah, and that's something we're going to analyze in
October.
In October, during the first quarterly budget committee meeting, we're going to analyze where did we land. You know, because every spring we try to project where we're going to end the fiscal year in terms of how much money we bring in revenue and how much we spend. And as council and the committee is always aware that we always roll over usually a positive fund balance. So, and at that time we'll analyze the positions that we requested. And I will address mine during my presentation about decreasing that halftime FTE, but it's for a reason, and I'll wait for my presentation to present that. So,
Thank you.
David, I had a couple other things I forgot.
Can I just ask a quick, I just want to clarify on that, because we had two positions that we never filled that were net adds last year, but we didn't, with the exception of reclassifying Kristen's position, there's no positions that we did, where we had people leave and that we're not filling, is that correct?
Correct.
I just want
Yeah.
to make sure that,
Well, I
Yeah.
think
it's just a little nuance, I just want to make sure that's
And
understood.
in the communication marketing management position, we kind of reanalyzed that, and really we want to look at the needs of the city and the finance tech position, that part-time position. I am utilizing those funds a different way to help serve the city and the employees in a better way. But like I said, I'll address that during my presentation. So.
I just wanted to clarify that what Craig was talking about is two requests that were made for additional people that we're not putting in this budget. And I don't want the community to think we're getting rid of our police chief, but it was a sergeant that was asked for that we'll reevaluate in October. So it's nobody's,
It's a new position.
yeah, it would be a new position, both that they're talking about.
So we're not cutting.
Correct.
Yeah, we're not cutting anything.
No,
That's what people out here in the rural world.
Yeah.
no, it was a new position. There was 2 sergeants asked for in the budget. I did have a couple others. I knew I had another piece of paper. Increase in cost of living this year is 4% for the exempt employees in this budget, as well as ASME, and 4.1 for SPOA. Budget also includes ASME contract negotiations. We moved from a 13-step system to a 7-step pay scale, and that would be for non-representatives as well as the ASME group.
There we go. I actually had a question on that salary schedule. Did moving from 13 steps to 7 steps have an advantage? Like, is there a smaller spread, like percentage-wise, when you step, like 5% to 2.5%, or?
Yeah, I mean, currently the spread is it's spread out. The 13-step system, for the first 6 years, there's a 2.5% difference in between steps. And then it kind of it slowly ratchets down. It goes 2%, then 1.5%. And we noticed, we were having challenges recruiting. When we moved to the 7-step system, yes, there's a upfront cost, and you'll notice when I get to the forecast, it kind of dips down rather quickly, but then it slowly kind of just levels off. And in the long run, it wasn't a lot of money when you look at 5 years. I can't recall when I put on the presentation with the city council. I know that was kind of executive session, but I want to say it was maybe $300,000 over 5 years, because people top out quicker, and on 13-step system, you're constantly having those step increases over many years. So
You found it more advantageous for
In the long run.
recruitment?
In the long run,
rather
yeah.
shorter.
And it was a big ask from our HR team, because they've lost quality senior candidates, because they just said, well, it's essentially a pay cut to come work for Sherwood, which, when there's a smaller talent pool, we can't lose those people. And we certainly don't want to lose them from our organization either, but.
Makes sense.
And I know you and I were talking, I know especially in our field, the GFOA has identified Oregon as one of those states that is losing folks in kind of the financial field in state and local government. So it's kind of challenging for us to hire. So,
Yeah, thank you.
my turn? Or did you want to?
Any other questions? All right, David, it's yours.
All right, let's talk a little 5-year forecast. So I put together some presentation materials, similar to what you've seen last year, and I have it up on the screen. I'm going to have you turn to page 1, and just kind of, this is just something I like to highlight. The city, for 16 years, we've exceeded 20% of the general fund revenue, 9 years at 30%, and 2 years at 40%. So I would just like to congratulate all the amazing staff sitting behind me, all the council, budget committee members that help make some of these decisions, that, we're fortunate we're in a different position than what some other municipalities are facing right now. So I'd just like to commend everyone for all those decisions over the years. We have, things are looking pretty good. So in the 5 years, as Craig explained, we are ending at 20% at the end of 5 years. No new positions were added. I do have to admit, this was we did have to make a few cuts to get the general fund balanced. Normally, in the past, it was making cuts to make that 20% work. This time it was, just making sure we got the general fund balanced. The Public Works Division, they're one of the biggest in the general fund. They made some cuts. IT made some cuts. I made a few cuts, and we were able to land at your folks' goal at 20%.
And just to clarify, when you say cuts, it's cuts from the ask, not cuts from current state.
Correct. So as we bring our budget, and okay, what can we remove? I get that's a great. I just want to clarify. Yeah, what can we remove from our budgets that would we could still operate, still be sustainable, but we could do without. So the next page, page 2, this is just to reiterate, if anybody's new in the crowd listening on YouTube land, the 5-year forecast methodology. We do prepare a conservative forecast, which we underestimate. What does that mean? We underestimate revenues, and we build in a layer of contingency for expenditures. This approach, as I just explained, it does make it a little more challenging to balance the budget, but as you can see from those results, we do have the, fortunate luxury of looking at, in 5 years, us landing at 20%. It is more of a hybrid model of forecasting. We use, like Craig was explaining, it's a collaborative budgeting process with all the experience and expertise of the departments. We all come together. We're putting that information together in the 5-year forecast, and the result was we're ending at 20% to meet your goals.
David?
Yes.
And just for folks listening, 'cause it's important to know, because 20% might seem really high for some people, but that's as of July 1st. And then we have to pay salaries and operate the government until our property taxes start flowing in December. So part of that 20% is just operations until we get to our big lump sum property tax payments. So, and then there's some reserve on top of that. But just so people understand, that 20% is not all gravy. That's part of that so we can operate the government.
Can you scroll up to the chart again? I had a thought for the future.
Mm-hmm.
So what's great, what's missing here to me is once we get past a year, we no longer see what the forecast was. We see the actualized, right, on this chart?
Yes.
I'd love to have 3 lines.
Like
So we maintain the history of what our forecast was and the actualized, and then what the 20% line is, because every year, we always actualize lower than the forecast, at least since I've been on council. So to me, that having that history of all 3 of those lines would give us more insight when we look at this.
Yeah,
Just a
no,
thought.
nope, I can add that.
Yes.
Yes. All right, page 3, it's just something I want to point out. The major categories of general fund revenue, the biggest as we know is property taxes. And I know that 8.5 million might seem a little high if you were to compare it to prior years, and because the prior years we budgeted about $7.8 million. We're actually projected to come in a little bit over $8.2 million. I'll get to the growth, but it's not a big there's not a big growth percentage that I'm actually factoring into the forecast. Is basically us starting at a new starting point. We're no longer at that 7.8 million, but we're projected. We've already collected over $8 million, so we're projected about 8.2, a little higher than that. So besides property taxes, there are a few other little buckets. Franchise fees, that could be from Northwest Natural Gas, Pacific Power, or not Pacific Power, PGE, city utilities. There's intergovernmental revenue. A majority of that is the money received from the Washington County for the library. And charges for services, that's one that, you know, it varies year to year. That has to do with a lot to do with development. Fines, interest, and other. You know, we're very fortunate. I know we're paying the price on the expenditure side, but interest revenue is coming in very, very well. We're earning about 5.25% on our investments, which is good. Page 4, let's talk a little bit about property taxes and kind of the history of growth in property taxes. This is just something I put together last year. Over 10-year average, we grew at 1.83%. The last 5 years, we've had a lot of growth over in the Tonquin employment area, of course. And the 5-year growth is 2.36%. I didn't know if anybody noticed in their budget book where it kind of broke out the makeup of the property tax. It's kind of what percentage is single-family residence, what is industrial. I don't know if you saw that industrial growth. It went from a little over 1% to a little over 7%, which is great because I know that's one of council's goals to try to balance that tax base out. So we're moving in the right direction. Below that, you'll find the chart. You'll notice there are 2 lines removed. There is no longer the original URA, so we don't have to worry about that, factor that into the kind of the growth plan. And really, the 5-year average growth I have at 1.12%. I brought down in 2025 for next year's tax rolls, just a growth of 1%. I know last year I used a 1.37 or 1.37% figure, but I think it was maybe a few months ago when the community development director, he presented kind of the housing report that just talked a little bit about how many houses were built, and we were down compared to prior years, so I adjusted those expectations down. So I'm projecting just really small, modest growth. I know we're going to see a lot of growth out in the Tonquin employment area, but that money is tax revenue or TIF revenue for the URA. So, Any questions on that?
Was a reason given for why housing was down?
It's really dependent on a depart. Yes.
We just talked about this at a regional level. It's high interest rates are really causing developers not to pull the trigger on projects.
Yeah.
That's the main thing we're facing. It's not just us, Lake Oswego. Most of the communities around us are seeing the same thing.
I think what 30-year average, or is it 7%? I haven't looked. I mean, I'm not in the market, but I haven't looked lately. But
I know.
A lot of people don't remember that, and we got used to 2 to 3% loans.
yeah.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about fines, traffic fines. You know, we're still dealing with the construction over on Roy Rogers, 12th and Sherwood. I know that intersection's kind of been completed, is what they say, but we still don't have parts of the system up, and those won't come online until they're done with the project, is what I've been told. So, and we're factoring in about 25% reduction. We talked at the last budget committee, we are 66% through, roughly 66% through of issuing all those refunds. The court staff's doing a great job. We had over 6,000 citations, either that we had to refund or slash, I don't want to say, I guess the word is vacate before potential defendants that paid online. So they're doing a great job. That impacted revenue a little bit, but I just put a little modest growth for over 5 years at 2%. You know, we started at a new level, just knowing the way to the design of those traffic signals, where folks can now right turn and just merge, so those are no longer going to be a violation like they were in the past.
Is the county helping with any of the expenses on that, since it was their sign placement that got us into this mess?
I would have to know.
They are not yet. We haven't had that conversation. So after we kind of figure out what the final numbers look like, we can talk about it.
Yeah, and once we get the final tally, I'm sure City Council would like to report out on that. So we'll plan on doing that. I have my court supervisor. She's tracking all the expenses associated with this as well. So. Other major revenue categories, franchise fees. As we said, you know, we do prepare a conservative forecast. The average growth the last 5 years for franchise fees is 6.66%. I've projected 6.5%. That's the average over 5 years. Even though we have seen Northwest Natural Gas, PGE, they're increasing their fees a lot more than that. So it's more a conservative approach just to keep in line with what this committee has asked of me. Intergovernmental revenue, it depends on state revenue sharing, the money from Washington County. Sometimes there's grants. Last 5 years, we saw a little over 13% growth. Again, the 5-year average growth is 12%. And charges for services, as I said, it's really dependent on a lot of, I don't want to say development here. And we've seen a growth of 15.38%. And the average growth I have in the forecast is 14%. I know the community development director, Eric, he said, you know, that it's being active again. Folks are building again. So, all right, page 7 kind of breaks down the major categories of general fund expenditures. Personnel services, of course, is our largest expenditure. I think it's just the largest expenditure with most organizations. We have materials and services, a little bit of capital outlay that Craig will cover when he goes over fleet and facilities. And we have the transfer out of $105,000. I don't know if you recall from last budget cycle, this is the money from the transient lodging tax that we transfer out to help support the Public Arts Fund and the Economic Development and Promotion Fund. So that's what those represent. And I just kind of wanted to show a breakout of all the departments in the general fund and kind of the makeup of what departments spend what. So if there's any questions, just let me know. This is kind of typical what we see. Public Works, Administration, Community Development, Community Services, and the Police Department. Last, page 9, expenditure assumptions. Inflation, and this seems to happen to me a lot. I prepare this report, and then the new inflation report comes out. But it was just, at the time of preparing this, it was just below 3.5%, at 3.48%. As I was reading online, most forecasts agree inflation will continue to trend downwards, but as we know, it's being a little stubborn right now. They believe short-term inflation expectations come in at around 3%. The Federal Reserve, as we know, they've been really aggressive to try to beat that high inflation, and they still continue to hold those federal fund rates high at a target rate of 5.25 to 5.5% until that economy shows more definite signs of slowing. It's still, the biggest question is when will it hit their target level of 2%? Like I said, it's being very stubborn right now. And so to be conservative, I had factored in inflation still being around 3.5% in the first 2 years, with an average increase over the 5 years of 3%. PERS contribution rates, those aren't changing this upcoming budget year, just because this will be the second year of the biennium budget that the state of Oregon sets. But in the following year, I think sometime in the fall, we'll know where rates are going to be moving forward for the next biennium. And just a little bit of a makeup, it's in your budget book, just kind of show the distribution. So the city at the time of publication of the budget booklet, Tier 1, Tier 2 employees made up 17.48% of our employees. The OPSRP, 66.5 roughly, and the same for the OPSRP police, 16.08%. Benefits. The major benefits are health insurance and PERS. I know we just covered PERS. We expect at January 1st, 2025 to see a health insurance costs increase about 10% for both Regents and Kaiser staff that are on those plans. You know, the average growth the past 5 years has been just about 10%, and what I've factored into our forecast is a 10.5% growth. The asset replacement plan, Craig and everyone down at Public Works, they do a great job on planning out asset replacement. This is just a plan they put together. It summarizes over the next 5 years what they have in terms of planned projects. This is located on page 10. And facilities and equipment is another major expenditure category. We've seen average growth over 5 years of 9.6% rounded up. So I factored in a conservative estimate of 10%. And the very last page, professional and technical is another major category of expenditures. This is when we're going out and hiring consultants or firms to assist us. Average growth the last 5 years has been 10.41%, so I factored in 12.41%. I factored in that over the 5-year forecast of 12.5% growth. And that's what I have prepared for you tonight in terms of the forecast presentation, but I'd like to open up to any questions that you folks may have on this.
Okay, so on the benefits question, we assume the cost will go up about 10%. Is that maintaining the same level of coverage and stuff like that, or is that it's going to go up and we'll have reduced coverage in health plans and stuff like that, right? I mean, because sometimes costs go up and we still...
There's no change in the service levels.
Yeah.
We're bound by to the same...
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Great.
Yeah.
If anything, it actually improves over time. It doesn't degrade ever.
Yeah.
Keep adding more things
It's
to
not
it.
part of our bargaining. I mean, you can't.
City county insurance,
Yeah.
it's a health plan through city county.
It's kind of conglomerate where a bunch of cities and counties get together, and so they all can negotiate a better price compared to some organizations. So. Yes. If there's no further questions, I was going to jump into department budget presentations, if that's all right. And the very first one is City Council.
Just want to highlight a couple things in the city council budget. One of the things that we do is update annual goals and objectives for this next year. As this last year, we did it as well. And we had 3 counselors attend the National League of Oregon Cities. I believe that might have been the first time in a long time that we've been able to have that. So I heard good feedback from each of the counselors that actually attended, which is good. Really, you list out the performance measures there, like council meetings and stuff. You know, that goes into not just having the meetings, it's all the setups and everything else from the city staff. So just hit that. Probably some of the change in the material and services, we did actually budget again this year to actually send a few counselors to the National League of Oregon Cities. And this budget might not have been completely in that, as well as last year we moved some money around for that. So that's really the change in materials and services.
Any questions on City Council budget?
I just want to add, those trips are invaluable, because not only is it a conference, we also spend time out there lobbying for federal grants. You know, it's a big reason. I think we, in the last couple of years, have had, I think we're up to $4 million in federal dollars coming back, and part of that's because of our lobbying efforts out in DC. So those trips are valuable.
It's been a great return on our investment.
It's a good return.
And I just wanted to point out to the committee that on each one of these slides, if you're following along on the slides, I do reference the page number. It pertains in the budget book. That was one of the recommendations last year, so I wanted to make sure we did that. And with that, I'll move it on to the city recorder. Sylvia.
Good evening. For the record, Sylvia Murphy, City Recorder. As you can see, my goals this year, similar to last year and prior years, is really heavily focused on our records management system, utilizing that system, trying to get more departments on board, licensing more staff, and utilizing that. One of the items that is not up there in the goals, but I have it here in the highlights from 23-24, was the amount of work and the amazing work done by our legal department and our intern, Emma Gill. With the work that Emma did here at the city, in the short time that she was here, we were able to go through 25 bankers' boxes of legal records that were over the course of 20 years or so. And it was a matter of my department assisting her with indexing those records, scanning those records, and then Emma's legal eye to determine what needed to be retained and what could be disposed of that had met retention. So to go through that many boxes of records was just amazing. So that was probably one of the highlights from this year. At this point, we still have about another 23 to 25 boxes of that we're still going through, waiting for either some additional support or in the legal department to have a review of those as we continue to go through those. Moving forward for next year, my budget is pretty much status quo. It's the only real major difference is going to be in your personnel services. My department still maintains myself a full-time employee, a 30-hour FTE, and a 20-hour FTE. So between the three of us, we continue to charge on. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions. Great work.
Thank you, Sylvia.
You bet.
All right, city manager stuff. A goal for this next year is to work on the deliverables that council had set back in goal setting for the city. Also, to continue to work with the lobbyists for outside funding. And then I have to say, with the superintendent leaving the school, I think it's a good time to reevaluate the youth program that was set up between the city and the school district and see if that's really how we want to do a youth program, or if we actually want to bring it into the city, since it's more focused on the city stuff. So there's some money in that this year to be able to help us get there. There's also some money, this last year we were able to send some youth from the school back to DC to the National League of Conference for the Youth Program, which is really good, especially if they're coming back and helping us out from the youth side to understand that all. And then it does have some funding in here for the chaperone to actually be going back with them. It would be, this would fall under the assistant city manager position. So that's kind of the highlights. There's some other stuff going on. Personnel services up some because we have the assistant city manager. We've actually moved some economic development time around this year in here. We have some money that's in this budget for materials and services that helps with the goals that the council set. One of the things was looking at some branding as was one of the goals in the budget book that has some finances to help us be able to do that, so to get that started. So, and there's some other things in there, but those are the bigger increases from materials and services.
And one of the largest expenditures in the city manager's budget and the materials and services is all the lobbying efforts, you know, the money we pay for state and federal lobbying. So that's where that's paid out of, the city manager's budget.
With a big return on investment.
Yes.
Also, very good return on investment.
Good evening. My name's Ryan Adams. I'm the city attorney. Not a lot of changes in my budget. We've cut our materials and services significantly. Last year, you'll see we had a budget for $75,000 for outside counsel. We've dropped that by $25,000. I am pleased. One of our highlights was that we took the negotiation of our AFSCME contract in-house, and we feel like we got we negotiated a fair deal on that. So I'm pleased to present that to you. I think that was a great result. I will also echo Sylvia's comments. We would like to keep this law clerk program going, and you'll see that there has been money budgeted for that. That is a significant savings to the city as far as our municipal court goes, and it's invaluable experience for our law clerk. So it's different than what you would just call a normal law clerk who goes to law school, right? Not only do they go to law school, but they've taken classes and they become certified, so they can actually prosecute cases on their own under the general supervision of a lawyer. So it's a really great program, and we do plan on continuing that. I will be leaving June the 14th for about a year. I'm going to be deployed. And Sebastian, would you please stand? This is Sebastian Tapia. He's our interim city attorney. He'll be filling my position over the next year, so we're pleased to have him on board. Council approved a 16-month contract I can't remember, early in May or late in April. Last council meeting, let's just put it that way. So we are pleased to have Sebastian on board, and he plans to just continue the excellent work that our department's been able to accomplish this year. So we're pleased to present our budget to you. Does anybody have any questions for me? I do. I plan to send council an email at least once a week, whether they like it or not. So.
Depends what it says in it.
What is the cost of the internship program?
Yeah, generally, I mean, we pay by the hour. So usually we pay $20 an hour, and it is a contract employee. So we don't pay benefits because they're not a full-time employee. And so, like I said, it's a benefit to them because they can put that on their resume and get a great job. I'm sure it's a great place to work. So I think it's mutually beneficial in that regard. Yeah.
Good evening, committee members. Thank you for having me. My name's Celia McAvoy. I'm the HR director. So we've had a very busy year in HR. We've had a lot of highlights, actually. We had our the first in a very long time health and well-being and safety fair this year. We had over 18 vendors attend that. So all of our benefits providers, we had PERS come out. You'll see in the continued goals, one of my goals is to make sure that if we're supplying these wonderful benefit opportunities for people, that they are aware of them, they're well educated about them, and that they're using them to the maximum available value so that we're not paying for something that's not being utilized. We were able to deliver our mandatory discrimination and harassment training. That had been long overdue, so we've delivered that across the city. We just completed a supervisor training series, so a series of 3 really good quality training sessions for our supervisors. We were able to negotiate that at no cost. delivered through CIS, and so we'll be continuing that into the next year, and we'll do some of that delivery in-house. We purchased and implemented Bamboo HR, which was the first electronic HR system that the city has had. That has been a game changer, I think, for us in terms of the ability for us to access information. And so again, you'll see in terms of goals, just continuing to roll out the functionality of that system that we have. So automating processes to the full extent and starting to look at the employee self-service side. So looking into next year, one of the things that we know that we really still need to do is a full review of all of the HR files. There are over 20,000 documents sitting in the HR folder in our T drive. That is a substantial amount of work, and City Recorder's Office are wonderful in terms of helping us with understanding our record retention requirements, but that is a very large undertaking that we will be doing next year. And then we're also hoping to do a review of our job classifications, just making sure that our job descriptions are relevant, appropriate, up to date, and still fit for purpose. While we're trying to do that as we're recruiting, so when we recruit, we review the job descriptions, but we really do need to kind of just make sure that they're all still fit for purpose. And we navigated Paid Leave Oregon, which has been a headache and is changing again on the 1st of July. I found out today, so I say that with somewhat gritted teeth, but that has kept us extremely busy also. So if there's any questions, you will see that there's some increases in there in terms of materials and services. One of the things that hits my budget that kind of sits in there and wouldn't be obvious is the cost of the insurance, not necessarily the medical insurance, but the insurance liability policies that the city holds. So they sit within the human resources budget, and whilst we negotiate, and Assured Partners have done a good job for us this year of trying to negotiate those policies, there is an increase across the board in the cost of those liability insurances. So with that said, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Of the insurances, so I think overall it was 16%. We saw reduction in, and we were able to work with Assured Partners to get negotiation in terms of our cyber security policy came down in cost, but pretty much everything else went up. Our workers' compensation, our property liability.
General liability. Yeah.
General liability, which is pretty indicative of what's going on right now everywhere.
That's the bulk of the $120,000.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was the name of the program you said through Gritted Teeth? Workday?
Oh, Paid Leave Oregon?
Oh, Paid Leave Oregon, okay.
Yes, yeah. It's okay, we won't make any eye contact on Paid Leave Oregon.
They don't use Francis, do they?
Yes, they do, they do.
Counselor Scott,
Never
I do have one thing in Lydia's budget is on the council goals. There was a conversation to start looking at some service delivery organizational assessment, and there is a small amount that would hit that materials and services. Yep.
I was just curious, the decline in cost for cyber insurance, was
Yes.
that because of preventative action taken by the city or drop in coverage? What was the driver?
So the coverage remained the same. So I think it was twofold. I think Assured Partners did a very good job negotiating for us on that this year, but also Brad and his IT department have worked really hard on doing things like they facilitated a tabletop cybersecurity exercise for us. We had the Department of Homeland Security come in and deliver that, which Brad and his team did. And I think exercises like that certainly help bring it down when we do our risk analysis, which is what then contributes to our insurance premium.
Oh, that's great. It's great to hear that everyone's taking that really seriously.
Yeah.
A lot of what you hear is that that's actually the best value for cyber insurance is all the preventative work that they
Yes.
make you do
Yeah.
before the policy goes into place.
Brad and his team do a very good job of keeping us all on the straight and narrow with it.
I had a question. For the city manager recruitment, are you planning on doing that in-house or using an outside recruitment firm?
I think that would be something that,
Oh,
sorry,
I
yeah,
just didn't
that
know
would
if
be
that
something
cost
that would
was-
be discussed with council.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
to be determined.
Okay.
We are trying where possible to recruit in-house. For example, the interim city attorney position, we recruited that in-house, so we didn't pay any source and selection company fees for that. We were able to successfully do that.
So do you think you have enough materials and service budget if you need to use an outside firm?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Okay, thank you very much.
Katie, to answer it, between HR and the city manager's budget, we could, if the council chooses to go outside, yeah.
Good evening, Budget Committee members. Brad Crawford, IT Director. A couple highlights I want to share with you from last year. Replaced the entire, all of the network switches that make up the that interconnect all of our buildings together. It was a big project, and one that a lot of the equipment that replaced was new when we moved into this building, so 18 years old. So we got a pretty good lifespan out of those, and expect probably the same with this new equipment that we purchased. So held a cybersecurity tabletop exercise with that Department of Homeland Security. It was something we were really excited to get done. We had some professionals come out and help us with that, and the whole senior leadership was a part of that, so they got to hear all of the things that we in IT lose sleep at night about, and we had some really good takeaways from that. So, and then the big project we just started this year is the new city website. That's going to be a 2-year project. We'll try and get most of phase 1 done this summer, with phase 2, which is some of the customer-facing, resident-facing features will come next year. Other than that, as far as what else we got planned in our budget, we really don't have a lot this year. The website's the big project. Other departments have some pretty big software migrations and upgrades going on, so there's a lot of involvement in us helping those departments kind of get through those projects. With more of us remotely working now, we're kind of doing some tweaks on how staff can kind of connect to the network from home and make it a little more efficient for them. And then some new help desk software is surely needed. The metrics we track here I'm not really pleased with, and I'm hoping that some new software will help us with that. That's a really small scale project, low dollar, but something that's needed. So with that, I'll answer any questions you guys have.
So I don't know if this is a question to you. I'm not sure who, but we've talked about upgrading the financial software and the problems around it and all the other. Is that part of this budget, or that's your budget?
I'll talk about it
perfect.
during my
Okay.
presentation, which I'm
All right.
next.
Okay, all right. I withdraw.
But just to explain a little bit of IT's numbers, really it's just personnel costs increased. When it comes to IT, in terms of materials and services and capital outlay, it just swings each year. It kind of depends on any kind of asset replacement they must go through. So,
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit to that. I think last year we had the full cost of the website in it. We didn't spend all of it, so that number is a little bit high on material and services. It's a little high this year because we're including some of that this year. But I'll just say, kind of anecdotally, our maintenance costs for a lot of our core systems are going through the roof lately. We've seen some of our big ticket maintenance bills double this year, and that seems to be the trend with some of these things. So it's causing us to kind of relook at how we kind of host some of our servers and how we want to manage them, because it's now getting to the point now where holding it on site may be more expensive than moving it somewhere else. So there's a deep dive that we need to do on that, just as these costs keep going up. So.
And is part of the maintenance due to the age of the equipment or any of that, or is it all?
Just the software that runs on those servers, and they're
Okay.
we kind of need it. We can't lose it. So we have to pay it. So.
Yeah, I know that with with Microsoft or something, after 5 years, your costs start going up for support, and then it goes through the roof.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was surprised looking at Microsoft contract. That's been fairly steady.
Right. I know.
All of the stuff that makes the servers work and the management software of those servers, those bills, our firewall maintenance doubled. Like, we have to have our firewall, we have to have the maintenance on it. And to go through a project to upgrade that would be a massive project and a gobs more expense. So it's just the way that we see it. And we've talked to our partners in other cities, and they're seeing the exact same thing.
But you're not referring to like our ERP software
No,
maintenance?
I'm talking about servers we host ourselves. Any other questions? Okay.
All right, the finance department is next. Few goals there. We're going to be pretty busy next year. I'm going to continue to look at passive revenues either through investments. I know part of council goals, we're going to start analyzing, seeing what kind of grants are out there, whether state or federal grants, really start looking at the money that's available out there. We are going to be outsourcing payroll. So what does that mean? I'm still going to have a payroll staff member. As you saw that I'm no longer going to be requesting that half-time FTE. The cost of it was about $41,000 a year. You pay per payroll. It's through Paycom. But it has a lot of advantages that our current system does not. There's no more hand-calculating retro pay. It's a very robust system to where folks, it's going to be all done through an app on a phone. So people don't have to come in and log in. And it does have a lot of metrics, a lot of qualities to it, to where it will red flag things that are anomalies that are not, let's just say I got paid $1,000 a pay period, and all of a sudden now it's $5,000. It's going to red flag it for my staff to review. So there's a lot of great things out of there. But it's going to help save even my payroll staff member from, the interruptions when folks want to update their, whether it's their deposit information or whether they're withholdings. We got a lot of those requests towards the end of the year where there's interruptions. So we are going to be outsourcing that with the go live date on 8/1. Currently, we're going through the data collection phase of this. It's through Paycom, like I said. We analyze ADP, paychecks, but Paycom, I've noticed some other state and local governments are using them too. So that's one thing we're going to do. I know, Taylor, you were talking about the software upgrade. So we're going to go live on 8/1 with our new payroll system, and then the following Monday is when the upgraded software system will be installed. So the financial system will be down for that whole week as they're installing that program. We're going to be busy in the month of July, really testing the program. One of the major aspects of testing was payroll. The system and the feel and look is changing quite a bit because we're on a 2016, 2017 software version, and we're upgrading to the newer version. But there's a lot of great qualities out of the new system, a lot of reports we're going to be able to generate and build in there. They can be sent automatically to departments that need this information to make decisions. So we're excited about that. A few other policies I'm going to be working with senior leadership on. I'd like to update the procurement card policy along with the travel policy. So those are some of the busy items. And then also there's a biennium budget that we got to prep for next spring. So those are going to kind of be the things that we're going to be focusing on. When it comes to my budget, you'll notice personnel costs, they went up about 10%, but like I said, it's really to do with the new STEP system, but then also a little bit more of my time is being transferred into finance, whereas before it was a little bit more at the URA. So it's kind of that one ebbs and flows, and the materials and services increased. We do have our audit costs in there and all the fees that we have to pay for whether it's actuarial valuations for our post-employment retirement plans, arbitrage calculations, and so forth. So that's really a lot of our budget. Materials and services are made up of those professional services that we have to use if we want to try to get a clean opinion on our financial statements. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
I think this is probably city charter, but credit card usage policy, is that also?
For employees or
part of-
council, which,
For council?
that's the charter, yeah.
Okay, all right, never mind.
Thanks, David.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to present from, do you have a question?
Last time we made a recommendation to the city council from the charter review committee to update that policy.
Oh, okay.
Just a minor change.
I will be presenting for municipal court. Some of the goals, they're going to complete the full dismissal, as we've already spoke about just kind of that little snafu we had on the northbound lanes only, Highway 99 and Roy Rogers, 12th and Sherwood Road. Transfer everything from web LEDs to LEDs 2020 in the law enforcement data system. And they're really looking at adding some more pro tem judges, just so there's availability of, Mr. Morris is out or whatnot. So we're really going to review that and make sure we have folks on standby.
I had a question.
Yes.
What is the completed second remission order of Governor Kotek's office regarding outstanding traffic fines? What was that? It's under this year's highlights for municipal court.
I think that was probably supposed to be Governor Brown. Governor Brown basically did away with thousands of traffic citations at the end of her term.
That's right. She did.
That were suspended to give people a second chance. So that went out to just about every municipal court in
That was
Oregon.
a state mandate,
That's correct.
Yep.
unfunded state mandate.
Can I ask you a quick question on the number of traffic violations? Does that include the cameras?
Yes, that is mostly the cameras. And you're looking at the 21,000 figure?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was projected. Like we said, not a little off. There's a significant activity. Folks got used to that system being down over there. And in that 2-month period, we had to dismiss over 6,000 tickets.
Well, yeah, it puts that into perspective, how much, compared to how much you get. 6,000 was a chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just was curious.
And during a normal year, I mean, if you really look at the data, the vast majority of the tickets are northbound on 99 at Sunset. So it's, I think the last time we looked at it, was only like 10% were actual Sherwood residents.
Yeah,
Sherwood zip code.
makes sense.
Yeah, Sherwood zip code, yes. Residents of the Sherwood zip code.
Right, which is huge.
And for their budget, total, oh,
No, he kept standing up like it was his turn, and then he sat down.
so total department revenue, you'll notice in the 24 budget, we had 1.9 million budgeted. If it wasn't for that little snafu, we would have exceeded that. But we are projecting, we're still going to come in about $1.6 million. So I did a small increase because I anticipate the traffic system's fully coming online next year, but I was being really conservative, just a 3% change like I talked about in the forecast. And really, and when it comes to personnel services, budgeting a little more overtime. They did have a little more overtime. They're currently working right now just to get those tickets dismissed. But really, as we talked about, it has to do with the new STEP system. Materials and services you'll see have increased to 23%, but as those the systems come online, now we got to start paying for them. Because right now with Redflex, when sections of the system are offline, they give us a full discount on paying for that part of the system. So as they're coming online, things are going to get a little more expensive.
So we only have 2 red light cameras, correct?
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking you were talking about over there, but yeah, just at the 2 intersections. Yeah.
I just want to add, though, we're not doing this yet, but in the last short session in Salem, they did expand cities' abilities to have like mobile red light cameras and stuff like that. So we'll probably be looking at that in terms of dealing with like school zones issues and stuff like that. Look, there you go.
You'll make $1 million, I promise.
Can those go on an SR right away?
Lindley.
I don't think so. But we're talking about these red light cameras in terms of finances, and I just want to add, at least from my point of view, the main reason we did those cameras was changing behavior, especially, with the new high school right there on 99 West. It allows our officers to not have to patrol that, so they can do more proactive policing and engage in other, in my opinion, more important activities within our city. So it's not a moneymaker. It's It's about making sure we're really good utilization of our police officers. So, it does, but there's also a lot of costs associated with running that program. It's not all revenue.
But it's also a deterrent once you get a ticket.
You hope.
So it does help change behavior.
There's a lot of Multnomah County people that need to learn, and we're helping them learn. We're helping educate Multnomah County residents.
How about Yamhill County?
Some of them too.
Yeah, some
I think it's mostly,
They're- Zip code.
zip code.
Is that what the number is for Sherwood, 10%?
Again, it's important for anyone listening, the Sherwood zip code is very large, and there is much more people living in the Sherwood zip code that do not live in the city than live in the city.
And I'll say, I said this to the committee last year, I don't remember a single time, at least that my office has prosecuted somebody in Sherwood, and we only prosecute the folks that get lawyers, but generally the folks that get lawyers are truck drivers, CDL holders, folks of that nature. So it's if we have, I don't know about it. So it's rare that somebody from Sherwood is prosecuted, at least from my office.
My mother certainly has gotten her ticket, and she lives in town. Full disclosure. And she's changed her behavior. She did the whole, sign up for the class thing, which is a wonderful thing. So if you do happen to have a good driving record, but you err, there are steps you can take and not incur the expense or the full expense.
Yep, you could come talk to my court staff upstairs or call them. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric, the Community Development Director.
Good evening, Budget Committee. Eric Relich, Community Development Director with the city. First budget item is CD management. This is mainly salaries, myself and our code compliance officer. No changes in personnel. Materials and service mainly are Infor, what we use to process building permits, or the technology software comes out of the CD management budget. So no major highlights there. Planning department, development, anyone looking to get development approval in the city, first stop is the planning department. So we're processing the land use applications for the industrial growth in the Tonkin employment area, any of the commercial growth. Also, any subdivisions our planning department is processing. Highlights for the next year, Sherwood West is a really big project. We just finished the application to Metro. If they approve our urban growth boundary expansion, we'll be looking at comprehensive planning, master planning, other plans for Sherwood West. So that'd be a highlight for next year. Really focused, go back one. Really focused in still on the Tonkin employment area. We have a study going on right now for the interior of the Tonkin employment area. It's going to be a little bit harder to develop that area, and so we're focused on doing some road alignment studies and utility studies to try and get that development going as quickly as possible. And then just encouraging housing development to reduce housing costs and provide more variety of housing. We are expecting to be busier than last year, so we do have an increase in the revenue, about 40%. For planning, that's just land use fees, not a huge number overall. The building department brings in more revenue, but this just demonstrates the higher revenue through land use permits that we're expecting. Happy to say we can do that without additional staffing. We're not proposing any additional planning staff this year. We have a really great associate planner who's been here about a year and can process those land use applications. In terms of material and service, looks like we're down a little bit from last year, but I think the main item in there is a large consulting fee that if we do get the urban growth boundary expansion approved, we're looking at a study for Elwert Road to figure out the alignment of Elwert Road through Sherwood West in partnership with the county. Building department, once the developer or applicant gets their land use approval, they'll move on to the building department. Building department reviews the actual structure itself and gets them the permit to actually build. Again, you can go to the next one. Expecting an increase in revenue, mainly because of the increase in construction activity. There's a few projects that have already gone through land use and are vested. Langer has a hotel approved that we're expecting to come in next year, so that would hit the building department roles. We do right now use a third-party commercial plan reviewer, and so with our increase in revenue from building permits, we pay a third party to actually review those permits. So with our increase in revenue comes an increase in our cost to make sure that we can process and actually review the applications. So that's the increase in material and services. I think the other big highlight for building department, we're going fully electronic. It is a state mandate, but the materials and service should go down because the state actually, well, the developers pay it on a surcharge to their building permit, but currently we pay another company to actually process and facilitate the building permits. So now we're going to use that surcharge that they collect and actually use the state system. And so we're going electronic next year under the state system. It's Acela, and that should reduce the materials and service costs for next year.
And have other cities used Acela in Oregon with some success so that it will actually work?
Yeah, they're...
To be the cynic, because we have other state tools.
Well, Francis, is it?
A very, very fair question. It's the Acela product, and I think there's a lot of confidence in the Acela product, and I think the question is, can the state staff who administer the Acela product, how is that service going to be? So far, they've been pretty good, but I think we'll find out.
So has other cities or counties been using the state Acela administered product?
Yes. Already,
so they've got some track record of using it?
Yeah, Happy Valley is one. Yes, the short answer is yes.
Thank you. Awesome.
The state negotiated that deal with Acela in 2016, so it's been in effect for quite a while.
Thanks.
Happy to answer any questions.
I got one. I got a letter from Costco saying that they're putting a Costco in. Does that affect any, I take it that's going to help budget, like revenue?
Yeah, and all the numbers that we're looking at here are fees for land use and for building permits. And I think big picture budget wise, not the main impact. I think, longer term it'd be the tax base that sees the greatest benefit. Really, we're focused on industrial growth, though, and that's, David mentioned earlier, going from 1% to 7%, I expect. I don't know if we'll continue at that trend, but the Tonkin employment area, from what I'm saying, it's not going to stop in terms of the growth. We got that change actually from 1% to 7% was really from one main development that went in. We're getting another one online this year, and so next fiscal year, whenever that actually hits the tax rolls, should see another bump. We just approved through land use another large development that's going to go in, and I think it's just going to continue until we actually build out the Tonkin employment area. So it's going to get, we got the big fish on the boundaries of the Tonkin employment area along the main roads, 12th and Sherwood Road, Oregon Street, 124th, and the interior of the Tonkin employment area is going to be a little bit harder to develop, and that's why we're doing that study. So eventually the big fish are going to slow down, if you will. But yeah, the Costco certainly would be a bump to revenue that we haven't projected in any of this. And we weren't sure if they were going to come in, but long term, we see it on the tax rolls as well.
Most of that will hit the URA, though.
I'm sorry, yeah,
the
so
increases will hit the URA.
in the Tonkin employment area, yes, it's going to hit the URA. But in terms of the percentage of by type, property tax by type, we're looking more diverse in terms of industrial versus commercial or residential.
Can you just clarify for those watching that letter that went out was for a neighborhood meeting, and that's the beginning process? Like, no application had been submitted at that point. It still has to go through planning and reviews.
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm describing it right now is if you're seeing online that Sherwood is coming, that Costco is coming to Sherwood, what I say is Costco is considering coming to Sherwood, and they have not applied for development yet. We have no application from Costco. The first step before they apply is to do a neighborhood meeting. That's to get feedback from the community on the proposal. They did that. I was there, very well attended, and they could take the next step and apply for land use approval. We'll do a public hearing for that. Everyone's welcome to provide testimony, general public, plenty of opportunity to learn about the project in detail and provide testimony through a public hearing.
Not really a question, but the CD management header made me think of the big plastic binder that I used to keep in my car. So thanks for that memory. This like CD management, the big CD CD binder that you used to have to keep in your car. Yeah, like one of these.
6 disc or just one?
I think like 4 disc across the top, and 100 or so pages in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
See if I can see this with my glasses off. I can't. Good evening, Ty Hanlon. I'm your chief police. Just want to touch some highlights for this last year, and you'll see in there that we ended up hiring 4 full-time officers. It wasn't any additions. It's just trying to keep up with the 4 retirements that we had. We also were able to finally bring on our full-time evidence tech, which has been great because we've been inundated with just a ton of evidence, a lot of electronic evidence, digital evidence that's been difficult to manage. So we have a full-time person doing that, and then we have our full-time CSO, which has been here forever. The other thing is that we brought on our reserve officers, and we continue to generate that program with, I think we're going to try and have 4 additional this year. The other thing I wanted to highlight, and you'll see there, is just that we're trending in all our calls for service, our mental health, our youth, our theft, and our substance abuse. So if you'll see our goals for 24, 25, we're going to continue to address those in the livability issues. In particular, obviously, one of the things that's been on the forefront is the mental health components that we're dealing with. And so that continues to be a challenge for us. Excuse me. You'll see that our mental health calls for service this last year was 40, but we have that unwanted subject with an additional 47, and that's a nexus that we tend to go on unwanted subjects at retail centers, homes, and they have traditionally been a part of a mental health component that we weren't allowed, or we just didn't have the time to bring the team in, but we were documenting that there was that piece there. So it's continuing to trend upwards. We brought on the second SRO, so that's what gave us our full FTE of 28. We had a half-time position slotted for that, and with the partnership with the school district, we were able to fill that. So we've had a lot of success this last school year. I think having a full-time person in the middle school and in the high school has been very good for the district. I think we've seen a lot of positive feedback with the kids and the engagement, particularly on social media. They've had a lot of fun there with that, and so we're going to continue to do that. Part of our goals, as you've seen there, is just enhancing our connectivity with the community, all of our events. We had some success with Coffee with the Cop and Bowling with the Cop this Monday, so if you're not busy, you can come out and see us there. Obviously, Cruising Sherwood, Robin Hood. We're going to be doing Fishing with the Cop. The one thing that's coming back, excuse me, I'm fighting a bit of a cold here, is possession of drugs. So if you recall, Measure 110 eliminated that here a few years ago. House Bill 4002, did I get that right, Mayor? Close enough, probably.
It's a blur.
Anyways, come September 1, PCS possession will be a crime again. So it'll give us some tools to address that. The nuance to this is that they'll have a deflection component to it, so it'll be similar to DUIs. You'll get a couple avenues to travel and have that expunged if you take care of it. And so it'll be much better than it was. So we're going to probably have an uptick in that arena because it's been, geez, at least 3 years that we've really not been very proactive in that. So those are some of the things that we'll be addressing there. If you go back to just our overall budget, yeah, thank you. Sorry. Oh, there. Obviously, materials and services has gone up only 3.81%. We've tried to really streamline that. Our biggest nemesis in law enforcement today is technology. Costs keep going up, and we're trying to balance out with personnel needs. But I think we were able to try and stay pretty much status quo for this coming year. And then the personnel services are just really driven by the most recent SPOA contract and the costs that were incurred in that, which, as Ryan mentioned, I think it was a good contract and it worked out well for the department and our budget. And aside from that, I don't think I have anything else unless you have any questions for me.
Great job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we've found a ton of value just in that being able to engage and tell our story and a lot of interaction with the community. I think it's been really important and valuable. So it, not only with doing the job that we do, but we get to have some fun doing it, with the community members. Very talented. I don't know how he does it.
There's very few police departments that have merch that can be purchased. Stop being crimey. Don't be crimey.
Yeah, that's actually the foundation. Don't be crimey, but that's a lot of fun. You're right.
Yeah, I was gonna say though, it started from a post.
Yep.
So.
I keep hearing about the Facebook, but I'd have to get a Facebook account. I don't do social media.
David, I'm right there with you. I hear these stories, and I'm glad that, yeah.
Something really good. I gotta screenshot it.
Yes.
We're on Instagram and TikTok too.
Kim has done that, and I appreciate that.
Print and mail it.
Where's it at in the?
Page 787. It's not in there, but where would it, she's asking where it would be.
Oh, yeah, it would be other narcotics. Yeah, so it's an opioid. It is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it keeps evolving in how it is getting into the country, really, and then how it's obviously getting into the hands of the kids.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. I've been really impressed by the SRO presentations to the school board over the last year, and it seems like we have some really great staff who are able to fill those positions. And just be sure to pass that along. It seems like they're doing a great job, and I've appreciated the way they've kept people up to date through that forum.
Yeah, thank you. It's a unique position because traditionally when you get into law enforcement, you don't think SRO. And so it takes the right personality and the drive, and I think we have two great people that are doing it. So,
Yeah, no, and that's really come across, that not only are we glad to have those positions, but we're especially glad to have people who seem like a really good fit to be in those positions.
Great, thank you. Library.
Just going to turn over to Kristen. She's going to talk through her departments.
Hello there, I'm Kristen Schweitzer, the Assistant City Manager. So first of all, I want to thank staff for being here tonight. Thank you, everybody. I will just quickly go through our departments, but if you have any questions, they are here to answer anything that I may not be able to cover. We are starting off with the library tonight. So the first thing that I want to highlight is we've had a 12% growth in circulation, which is up 17% from pre-pandemic. So super excited about that. One of the great accomplishments this last year is the new Sherwood Library Foundation, which is also known as SHELF.
Love it.
Very creative. And that's just going to be a great avenue and support for the library moving forward. So that's a huge major accomplishment this year. Kudos to everyone involved. And the other thing I wanted to point out is we are participating and very active in the WCCLS funding and governance evaluation project that is underway with all of the member libraries. This is going to help plan for the next levy and beyond. So that's something that we're trying to make sure that we're very engaged in and making sure that we're communicating with council and that everybody knows where we're moving, how we're moving forward. If we look at the revenue, we received a 2% increase this year from WCCLS. We had anticipated 1% to 2%, but we kept our budget flat. You'll actually see that we went down a little bit, just ever so slightly in materials and services. There is an increase in personnel services, and that's just with cost of living. Okay, moving on to Fieldhouse. Fieldhouse, we continue to focus on increasing the number of leagues that we have for both adults and youth. One of the things that we're really looking forward to is the updates that will occur with the website and different ways for us to engage folks, whether through social media and through other advertising opportunities. So I think that'll be a really good avenue for us, but they're just plugging away. Obviously, things went to a standstill during the pandemic, so it's taken a while to get things back up and going. Really not a significant change to the budget there. Once again, a slight increase in the revenue. Going back, you'll just see that it's grown every year. Once again, we're going to exceed what our expectations were of what was adopted for the budget. Personnel services have remained pretty flat considering the cost of living, and then materials and services, we've actually decreased. Any questions there? Yes.
Question on Fieldhouse versus recreation, sports, and leagues for personnel. Is that just how it gets categorized, or is there?
It's really how Lance codes his time. So if he is helping coordinate and manage Snyder Park or the tennis/pickleball courts up at Snyder Park, then he's coding his time to recreation. And then that's also where we're bringing in our rental fees for Snyder Park as well. Not for the park itself, but for the fields, excuse me. And then the field house is field house.
Yeah, and those rental fees, or the fees associated with the recreation sports, those we've been setting aside in our general construction fund, knowing that those turf field replacements will be coming up soon. So I think as of 6:30, we had, I think it was around $500,000 set aside in reserve because, you know, it's expensive to replace that turf, but we're going to have the money set aside. And one thing I was going to point out, and I'll work with Kristen and Lance next year, is we had those two departments too, because one of them we used for our partnership that we used to have with the school district, but moving into a biennium budget and it doesn't look like this partnership would is going to redevelop. I might look at trying to just combine just to one department, so he doesn't have to track his time and so forth. But I kept that open, maybe with hopes that it might redevelop, but it doesn't sound like it's going to. So it's going to collapse them.
Make it easy.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll rename it to something. Okay, moving on to events and volunteers. So this would cover events such as movies in the park, music on the green, any of those type of events that we're doing, as well as our volunteer program. And our biggest number of volunteers is at the senior center. It's extremely valuable resource at the senior center, and something that we need at all of our facilities, but especially there, to be able to serve meals every day, to now have volunteer drivers for our new shuttle program. But this has become a very valuable program, even more so than we had experienced in the past. So we're very grateful for our volunteers. We just had volunteer recognition, and hopefully a lot of you were able to attend our dinner a couple weeks ago, but that was really fun. And we're just going to continue to look for ways to engage and retain volunteers.
Tremendous value to the community by getting those volunteers to help support these services and the significance of having a full-time volunteer coordinator to help manage, recruit those wonderful people.
Yes, indeed.
Put a cost to all those volunteers. I think Tammy's done that before. It's tremendous.
Yes.
Return on investment.
Tammy has done that before, and I don't remember what the rate is, but it was, yeah.
I mean, for 10,000 hours.
Right, yeah.
Kristen, do you know what the time frame is to try the Adopt a Park and Adopt a Trail program?
Yeah, so we're working right now on the Adopt a Trail program, and specifically starting with Cedar Creek Trail. And we can also look over at Woodhaven and some of those areas, but since part of that's ours and part of that's Woodhaven's, who takes care of it, it becomes a little bit stickier. But we're working with Public Works right now to identify how best to do that, and then we'll expand that out to the parks as well. But we continue to have people who are looking for ways to give back and want to do that, so.
Great, thank you.
I had a question as well. In the highlights at the top, it says that there's a 60% increase in volunteer hours over the previous year. And then in the performance measures at the bottom, the volunteer hours. Is that captured somewhere else?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The 23-24 highlights, the first bullet point is 60% increase in volunteer hours over previous year. And then down in the performance measures on that first row, the numbers that I'm seeing don't
match up?
Yeah.
We'll take a look at that then and make sure that gets corrected.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll make sure that gets corrected.
Oh, maybe it was supposed to be 6%.
Could be.
I don't know.
We'll look at that. As for the budget for events and volunteers, no significant changes. Once again, small increase in personnel services. The revenue that is mainly in regards to like sponsorships for Music on the Green and Movies in the Park is where our revenue comes from there. Now we are moving on to the Arts Center. One of the things that I wanted to highlight that is not in the book, but Shanda just let me know today, things continue to be very busy out there. I know that when we met this week, she shared that, we have rentals like 18 months from now who are already booking. Of our 37 camps that we have offered this summer, only 3 still have space available at them. So 4 of them are full, only space available in 3. So continuing to stay extremely busy over there. The one thing that we did do at the Arts Center this year is look at bringing in a part-time seasonal employee to help with our summer camp program, so like a camp director, because that was falling on our staff who's also trying to do all of their other regular jobs, as well as having all of these kids in the center during the summer months as well. So we're recruiting for that currently and hope to have somebody on in the next 3 months. It's a minimal cost, and we figured out that we'll be able to pay for it with the increase in kids that we can serve.
I have a question and a suggestion.
Okay.
I'll start with the suggestion. So reading through the goals, there's several goals that are related to the Art Center, but there's also many goals that are related to art in general across Sherwood. So it feels like calling this Art Center is a little limited. Maybe it should be Arts Department or something. I don't know. That was my suggestion, but
Okay.
take that offline. Question, since I've asked this, I think, for 3 years in a row, I'll ask again. Have we done any studies or implemented any kind of like pricing based on time and day and those kind of things?
We are currently looking at that.
Thank you.
And we'll be addressing that in the fee schedule recommendations.
Love it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I know the fiscal year's not over yet, but do we know where we are on revenue for the Arts Center year to date?
David, do you have any idea, or Shanda?
I don't, but I could bring it to the next committee meeting for you.
Yeah, I'm just curious on, I mean, we've talked for years about trying to get to close to break even as possible. Just curious where we're at.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you brought that up, because on this slide, and David, I'm wondering if you can help us, because the revenue looks like there's a big fluctuation from the adopted from 2024 to the proposed, and that was from the transient lodging tax?
That
is
was from
correct?
the transfer in from the transient lodging tax, that money that had built up for years. We transferred that in to support the Arts Center, thus unrestricting some dollars to help support some other council goals of public art and economic development, those two new funds that we created, so.
Yeah, if it's a huge deal to figure it out for the next meeting, don't worry about it. But it'd be great to see kind of normalized, you know, what's our revenue, what's our expenses, you know, without the one-time
Okay.
dollars in there.
I'll note that too for next year's presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to mention, as a parent of two elementary age children who may have driven that 17% increase in circulation at the library this year, between what they do at the all the programming that they offer at the library, all the soccer that gets played at the field house, and all the great camps and events that are at the Art Center, Sherwood is a really great place to raise little kids. And even if you don't have little kids, Sherwood is seen by people in the community as a place where people want to raise kids. And so big thanks to everybody here who helps to make that possible for the kids of Sherwood and for everybody who wants to move to Sherwood to make use of all those amenities.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to the senior center. As you all are aware, they continue to do great things over at the senior center. Had a 16% increase in meals served from fiscal year 21-22 to fiscal year 22-23. We have it, sorry, I just jumped right into our other budget numbers, but with that increase in meals served, we've had to increase our food budget, and that's what you're gonna see on the materials and services, a pretty significant increase for the food budget, one with the cost of food going up, and then also the increase in meals being served. You'll notice a slight decrease in revenue at the senior center, and that is not from the number of meals being served. That is because we had anticipated hopefully receiving more funds from the county and from the federal government to support our meal program. We had anticipated receiving $153,000, and the amount we're receiving is $120,000, which is still fantastic. We'll continue to receive that this next year, but some of the other sources that were feeding into that source have dried up. So we've steadied out at $120,000 for revenue. Do you have anything to add to that, David? Probably not.
No, but just to add to it a little bit, that, you know, one of the council goals and goals that have been set by Craig and Kristen is that we as staff really get out there and start looking for grants, see if there's anything more that we can add to the senior center to make sure we can keep folks fed.
What funding sources dried up?
So Maya, you're gonna have to remind me again.
Sure. So the COVID era funding of, yeah, the ARPA funds and so forth, those dried up, and then the NASIP funds, which is another source of nutritional funding for older adults, they restricted those funds to a smaller number. So, the state of Oregon didn't get as many dollars, and our county didn't get as many dollars, so they couldn't raise our dollars to the amount that our numbers now are at. So they're based, the number that we're being paid for is based on our 2021-22 budget year participation rates as opposed to our current participation rate.
Right, and participation was down then, right?
Right. And it's not
Right.
the other thing.
All right.
And I know we're encouraging grant writing. I hope you guys are getting spammed as much as I am from League of Oregon Cities for the grant writing classes or whatever. And so while I don't write a lot of them, I hope that we're letting all the departments know if you'd like some help and support in being better at grant writing, who knows, those classes may be worth it. So
No, and that's great. And Maya has obtained several grants, as has
Okay.
Adrian for the library, but especially for some of the different programs that we've started up, the Pearls program. So there's a lot of small grants that go
even
into here as well.
As we're trying to build our bench strength of more junior people and say, hey, this is a project for you to get some grant writing under your belt, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe, again, I just see so many advertising for those classes, and I just think, well, let's make sure our people at least feel like I can attempt some. So I know it's a lot of time and everything else, but anyway. All right.
Good point. Thank you. And I already mentioned the shuttle program is up and going at the senior center, so that's another accomplishment that we're really proud of this year. Any questions?
Yeah, speaking of the shuttle, how utilized is that right now?
It's building up, sorry, I'm just.
Yep, you can come up if you want. It's ready to go.
Okay, I can talk. So we opened it up for full usage just at the beginning of this month, and it's starting to pick up. In the month of March, which was our kind of ramp up, we started on March 15th. And between March 15th and April 1st, we did 17 rides, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for the people that took those rides, it was amazing. There are people that hadn't been able to get out and either come to the center, or some of you might know that TriMet has restricted its ridership program for its paratransit system, so we're able to step in and serve those people that were left high and dry by TriMet, and they're just like so grateful to be able to go to the doctor, get into the dentist, go to the vet, come in, grocery shop, just all those kind of things that we take for granted to do, that they're able to do now. So we'll see those numbers increase over time, I'm guessing. We have new signups every week, so I'll have a better statement this time next year.
Okay, and there's enough budgeted to provide the increased services then, I imagine, for the next year?
Yeah, so the major increase in budget for the shuttle is in our training for the shuttle drivers. Safety is very important, so we put them through comprehensive driver training through Ride Connection. They train our drivers, and so that's where a lot of that cost comes in.
The drivers are volunteers.
The drivers are volunteers, yeah, so they're dedicating their time to us, and we're just paying to train them, which is lovely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a certain radius that we stick to for appointments, like how far we would drive?
Sure. So our radius is the 97140 zip code, and if somebody has an appointment outside of that zip code, we take that on a case-by-case basis based on what the shuttle's doing and its program for the day. But we can't go farther than 17 miles because we just can't get back to the center in time.
Any other questions for Maya? Thank you. So, community services management, there's nothing proposed. But we did leave the slide in here. All of my time has been reallocated to the city manager's office, so that's where you saw the increase in costs there. Any other questions?
I mean, is that permanent, or is there a plan to backfill you at some point? I mean, I know
So,
we approved the
yeah, that was
position,
part of
so-
the one position that we were talking about that will be reevaluated in probably
So
end of
October.
October and November. But at this point, there's not the funding to support, or the budget to support backfilling that position. So Craig will need, or whomever is in that role at the time will need to make a decision if there's adequate funding to do so and what we want to do. Anything else?
So fleet and equipment. One thing that we're kind of proud of in the Public Works Fleet section is meeting annual state requirements, I would say, and that will continue to do that. That's some of the emissions, some of different electric charging stations in some of those areas. So one thing, when Maya was up here talking about the senior shuttle, also the cost of fuel for that shuttle would come out of here, and we're still learning kind of how that's going to work. We'll have a better number for next year, but that is in our fuel consumption. Really, only thing in the fleet side, besides the one-time expenses on the next page, is the revenue here is really our surplus equipment. So that's part of our asset plan, what we're actually getting rid of and what we're planning on bringing in for revenue. But that's really the only big item in this, in the actual numbers. Some decreases. That's going to vary on each year. The next slide, David. These are the pieces of equipment or fleet that we're asking for as one-time expenses. We have a facility van. We have two older vans that we've had. The one that we have, we changed out last year and went to electric vehicle. This proposal would be going to electric vehicle for the facility van since it's in the city use, short distance stuff. We've got some problems with that van, and it's been around, I forget what year it is, but it's old. And then a replacement, there's two replacement vehicles in here for the police department. One's for the K-9 unit. We base those usually on miles as well as years, but a K-9 unit is by hours because it runs. It doesn't go as many miles as. So that's in here. That's up in the asset replacement. We usually run our police cars 7 years or 100,000 miles. There's a few of them that go over that by the time we get replacements here. There is a vehicle in here. It's called the sergeant car as well as career cycle planning. But really, we've been having problems we've talked about it at the budget the last couple of years, getting cars here on time, right? So when an officer goes out and has an accident or somebody hits them, say it happens in February. There's been one time a year that they order the bank, you have an order bank really to buy the police cars. And what happens is it could be October. Last year's August went to October, and that's when you can order it. And what's been going on is you a lot of times have one, maybe 2 times a year to order those police cars. So a couple of years ago, Chief, we started working, and the captains, we started working on a plan to try to get a couple different cars that we could actually store at Public Works that would rotate into the future asset plans for the police department. So if we wreck a car, I use the February one. We wrecked a car probably January, February it was a year ago, and we didn't get the police car for almost a year. So by the time with all the shortage. So this would provide us with a couple different car options to have, and then we would rotate them in to kind of start that cycle. So one of them, the sergeant's car, is if in October we actually move forward with hiring, if the council wants to move forward with hiring a sergeant, we would already have the car for the sergeant to be in. And the other one was more just trying to move forward with getting something here so we didn't have to wait a year. But if we can actually buy 2 of them, that would be really good for the police department long term. Otherwise, I've heard things going back and forth in the fleet side from our fleet supervisor. They were talking about number of cars you purchase a year going to, like Ford was going through all their stuff. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and the last thing I want to do is have the police department short on vehicles as we move forward, and they're not having enough vehicles to put officers in. So, yes.
This last one, vehicle new PIO, is that public information officer?
No, that is your police interceptor.
Oh, I'm like,
vehicle.
I didn't know we had public
No,
information officer.
it's a police interceptor. Yeah.
Okay.
Did I get that
police
right, Chief?
interceptor.
Oh,
Okay.
boy, I'm like, yeah, that's what, it's just a term. So we've actually tried this the last couple of years. We haven't been able to fund them, but I think it's a priority to least we have at least one, and it would be nice because you could order this sergeant vehicle if council wanted to move forward at the end of August, if we have the money, and we might not even see that car until February or March of next year. So anyways, that's what the vehicles are in here for.
So if we purchase a couple cars before they get put into use, so would we start the 7-year timer on that car from when it got put into use, or from when we purchased?
We would actually go off 100,000 miles on a car like that.
Yep, that sounds great.
And is there any value in, once the cars hit 100,000, I know that costs go up for repairing and all of the other stuff, but for some of those, could we still park those at the Public Works and leave those as, you know, super backup emergency cars?
I think there's opportunities to do that. I also think that we have an emergency management coordinator that needs a vehicle that we are supplying a really old vehicle to right now for when they go to meetings. I think there's some other uses for just not getting rid of them, and if that's why the revenue in the fleet side's down a little bit, because there's no guarantees that August rolls around that Ford says you can't order till November, and we've got some coming off that they could still use some of the older ones. The issue we run into is transmission problems, and it costs quite a bit to get a transmission, and you don't get your value back out of the car when you go to sell it with that kind of mileage. So we try to keep them as long as we can.
Yeah, no, and I've never gotten value out of a car that I expect anyway, so it's
Right.
you know, sometimes it's worth it just to hang on to it.
We
Exhibit A is my Honda van out in the, but it's paid for. That's a good.
No,
So-
we've actually.
My wife has it right now.
We've actually held on to them. It's just that you get a little more value than
Oh,
you
yeah,
would
I get
out
it.
of
I
it
get it.
later on. So that's the vehicle and equipment that we're
Can I make a
requesting.
quick
Yeah.
suggestion? Instead of just putting canine replacement, is there a way to put canine car replacement? It sounds like you're replacing the dog for 78,000. Yeah.
I think what happens probably from the public works side, working with the police department, instead of putting a vehicle, for their record, they put a K9 and it gets submitted, and David puts it in that way, so.
Really expensive dog.
Yeah, no, good catch, good catch, Nick. No, good catch, but it's probably how we have the terminology. So, facility, any other questions on fleet? Facilities, I would just have to, one of the things we kind of pride ourselves is, not just in the goals, it kind of ties to the performance measures, is number of insurance claim involving city facilities. We like to try to keep that at 0, and it looks like we've been able to do that. So that's one item there. Next slide, I would just say the 250,000 in revenues down. That is because it's down, that's Sesame Donuts rental coming in there from rental property, and we actually had the Senior Center Community Development Block Grant last year's revenue, and we don't have that in there this year. So that brings that down. Materials and services in facilities is kind of like parks. It fluctuates. It's part of the asset plan projects that actually go in there. So you got to increase probably because we've got, when we get to the one-time expenses, there's actually facility-related projects. So I can highlight that. One of the big items on here we've tried to budget over the last couple of years, it come through a CEP grant from the Historical Society, was the wheelchair. The lift over there hasn't been working. It's actually in the budget this year of $84,000. Another deal is some window replacements at the Mooreback House. We actually did the second storage there. And then a big item in here is $35,000 for Art Center video visual upgrade. I didn't realize we had such a problem until we had the event for the volunteers, and we couldn't get stuff to work. Talking to the Art Center folks and Kristen, it sounded like it was creating issues with the rentals. So we have actually had some savings in our budget this year from projects. We've actually moved forward already with that. I'm just not certain everything's going to be done in time, so we probably might need some money for that at the end of June, so rolling in. Otherwise, we will not spend that money next year. So, but I think we need to leave it in there right now. That's really the facility. There's a variety of different things in there. There's working with the police department on women's lockers. They've hired more women in the police department than they have enough room for the lockers, so we need to add a few there. So that's really the one-time expenses in facilities. Parks maintenance, a couple highlights that we want to continue to do for 24-25 is provide weekly playground inspections, as well as the cannery. We have an issue with the audio system, and we're hoping to get repairs this next year in that. So a couple goals. I would say materials and services, as I said before, it's down a little bit, and that is it fluctuates with our asset plans and what we're actually doing besides O&M costs.
Parks are always awesome.
They are. And then on,
By the way, on that,
go ahead.
on the replacement of turf at the baseball field,
Yeah.
Is that artificial turf or real turf?
Both.
It can be both.
Okay.
It can be both. So we have different times on the artificial baseball field. We actually replace cutouts when they get bad, so spikes don't, or cleats don't get stuck in there.
Yeah.
Then there is actually the actual when the turf needs replaced. Natural turf, if stuff areas need to be replaced, we actually replant and do some of those too.
I would encourage making this into if it's not too much work, making it into a community project. My first backyard was all grass from a city park when I lived in Utah, and they just cut all of the strips of sod, and people could come up and load up their trailer. And but I don't know if I don't know if that's something that is too much work or effort. But I'd also take the fake grass in my current yard.
This will be the brown cutouts that you see on the baseball field up
so
there.
that's just
Because
dirt.
there's safety issues from sliding
That's
into
not
the
gonna be fun.
bases, so we try to cut those out about every 5 years.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want those.
No, I don't want that.
That's really the parks, parks maintenance one-time expenses. We have, like I mentioned, the cannery square. There's some equipment in here for replacement that could have been in the fleet side, but it's in the park side. We have the baseball cutouts, and then we have some sealing of some parking lots that are up on the asset plan. So pretty minor list, to be honest with you. Usually it's a lot bigger. So on that. Yeah.
The question on the Public Works Department facility, when is that plan to move to the new facility down on Oregon Street?
So we've actually applied for, and there's a couple things that's got to happen, right? So there's a cleanup. We've actually acquired the property. We'll talk about that when we get to the URA budget this last year for the Oregon Street. We've actually applied for a grant for cleanup. That's really going to, if we get it or we don't get it, we'll kind of, that'll tell us what the schedule is, right? But in our SDC charges and everything, it was 27, 28 is what we were planning for, 29 right in there. But we actually have to get the funding of the cleanup part before we can move, right? And then we'll have a design and everything for the facility. We've done feasibility, but we still need to design. That's probably 12, 16 months to do the design on that after we get started on the cleanup, so. Engineering, a couple highlights here. Engineering departments, they continue to be busy. Working on, they're actually, some of the URA projects, even though they're listed in here in the engineering, is the Ice Age Drive project as well as the bridge project. One of the things that's in the council goals update over the next few years, update our master plans. In this next year, the TSP starting with the update. That's really going to, we're actually looking at a grant, if we can actually go after it or not, or if it makes sense to not go after the grant because it allows the city to do more with their TSP and not controlled by ODOT requirements. So the TSP's in here, so that starting that in September to try to start working on that. And if not, we'll move our storm and sanitary stuff ahead to, instead of doing the TSP, otherwise that'll start in late spring. And then we'd like to really start working on some design manual updates. I'd really like to get some resiliency in our manuals as we move forward for future earthquake or whatever may happen, that we're actually putting stuff in the ground all the way around. Engineering also, they work on the CIP projects. That's not in here. This is just general fund cost. On the next page for cost, there is some increases in materials and service, not a lot. Engineering was a department that actually asked for a staff person of an admin that we couldn't fund, and it wasn't a high priority collaborative that made the cut list, right? So with senior leadership, so that's where we're at on engineering. And then the last one is one-time expenses. You can see in here, as we talked about council goals, there's certain items listed in here that pertain to the council goals, as well as Eric had talked about the Sherwood West, the vehicles, all the stuff you'd seen before for one-time expenses that we talked about in the budget. The Toro lawnmower? Oh, it's supposed to be an R in there, David. Toro, it's a Toro. It's a replacement.
Never felt to misspell something on here.
Toto's with the theater. It wasn't one of those spell check things, so it didn't.
It probably come up as a spell check and you hit, anyway, so no. It's a Toro.
Is it one of those, Craig, is it one of those, I was in Beaverton, I saw Public Works crew with a remote controlled mower.
It's not the remote control mower. Those are nice, but it's
Yeah.
not one of those.
It looked very expensive.
I think if we were doing all the field striping we used to do, they have a remote one that we would probably be, it cuts down time like you wouldn't believe, but we don't need it. So any questions on the one-time expenses or anything related to Public Works in the general fund?
Great job.
Thank you.
I do want to say something here. For talking about the parks, I actually work at Snyder quite a bit, and we get so many compliments about our parks, how clean they are, from other people coming to the park, and I just want to compliment that I'm always so proud, not that I had anything to do with it, but I'm proud to be part of, the city as a resident of 97140.
Well, thank you, and be sure to pass that on to the park staff. I know they take a lot of pride in the work they do.
Now we can open up, is there any, oh, go ahead.
I was going to suggest maybe a short break before we start the fund discussion.
Yeah, I second that.
Third.
How long you, 5 minutes? 7 minutes? 9 minutes?
I would concur with Councilor Scott.
Yeah, I heard that too.
My daughter will be here next week.
So,
Yeah.
So there's a new impetus of board members, so
So-
not necessarily take a break, but
I feel like in the past, we've always gone 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I was,
6 to 9.
okay. I would be interested in calling it a night here and coming back next week and continuing from this point, so I'd make a motion for that.
my
I second
question
it.
though is, where are we on the schedule?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what I was going to ask.
Are
How
we
does
ahead
that
of
impact your
schedule, behind schedule?
Oh.
Yeah, so the last couple of years, we usually just get through the general fund, and then we start with all the fund discussions after that and get through the URA too. I think last year we probably came back for an hour, hour and a half at the most. So.
Do we want to finish our general fund discussion and then?
Oh, yeah, we could finish the general fund discussion.
Okay.
I'd skip the break and see if there's any questions.
Yeah,
and
that's
get
what
out of
I was-
Dodge.
I'm good with that then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So is there any questions you have on the general fund or any topics you want to discuss?
With changing to the different steps for the employees, what was the, I guess, overall cost for that for this first year? Do you know? Like what portion of our budget that is the proposed?
I don't have those, I could bring those figures next week, but I did bring them to an executive session, so I already have that stuff prepared. I think a couple counselors were, when we were talking about ASHME negotiations, but I can bring that next week for you.
And that was only an executive session because that was when we were negotiating?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's public now, so
Yeah.
we can bring it. Yeah.
Great job with the proposal. To all departments. I love the return to the collaborative approach that Craig has brought. It hasn't been a part of the process in 12 years, 13 years. I think it helps create buy-in with all the departments, so they all understand what everybody's going through. Everybody has needs, and there's limitations. So big kudos to Craig in your interim role, working with everybody. Outstanding.
Awesome. Thank you. The team did a great job. And, it's just not a collaborative role with the senior leadership. It's all of management, the supervisors. I'm sure that other departments, as Kristen's team was here, no different than the chief, his captains, some of his sergeants help along the way. I know in our Public Works, our supervisors, I'm sure David's group helps him, everybody. I mean, we're just the ones here to deliver the message, and it's really the whole team that is why we have a good budget. And if everybody knows, that's why when we sit and talk about the great work you guys do of keeping us as a balanced budget, we've got ending fund balance and everything. It starts here and it goes down all the way down to the bottom of, especially in the supervisor, people working in the budget part of it. It's not just the directors and the city manager. It's a team approach. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, there's no gotchas.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're having all those meetings that you've had, everyone knows what everybody's thinking, and decisions and logic, and it's outstanding.
So thank you.
Craig, is your microphone on?
Yeah, it is. It's on green. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I was actually going to ask, what's the life cycle replacement for these microphones? It seems like everybody was having trouble getting them on and off today.
Let me talk to Brad about
Okay.
that. But,
We've only hated the buttons on these things since day one.
yeah, there might be so.
With if we were to move forward with a budget where we delay considering some additional hires until October, is that another argument for shifting to a biennial structure and just doing things like that more often? Or where do we stand with the biennial versus?
Yeah, I know
year
we talked
budget
about we were
process?
going to move forward with the biennial budget, but it'd be next spring when we come to the budget committee, so we can get on the same cycle as the state of Oregon.
Okay.
Because the state of Oregon's next,
As well as the election routine.
yes, and just, we got elections coming up, city council, just, if you were incoming, you would already be bound by a 2-year budget. So that was a great discussion point, Keith, that you made, that maybe we should hold off. So yeah, but when it comes to biennial budget too, yeah, we're going to set a biennial budget, but that off year, there's still going to be the quarterly budget meetings. I know that's one thing that you brought up in October when we discussed this of, okay, what's going to be the process to understand department's needs? And so there'll be a lot more supplemental budgets because, you're trying to project out and trying to project your expenses out for 2 years. So there'll be a lot more changes if we can make it work with any carryover fund balance, any new projections. But there'll still be a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with the departments, like projections. It's just, we don't have to have these committee meetings in the big books and so forth, so.
That is a kind of nice byproduct. Like, if we're not comfortable making a decision in, is it May right now, we can wait. We can just wait till October or to January or whenever we do feel comfortable making
And
a
the one
decision.
challenge with this is, if we were to add a position, one of two things would happen. It would be either in June, because we were balanced only by $11,000. So got to look at the salary and that'd be hiring someone in June, or do we want to actually wait to see what happens if we carry over an extra 500,000, but only 200,000 is associated with projects? That'd give us $300,000 to talk about. So just give us something to talk about in October and something that we could make work.
Yeah, no, that extra
Yeah.
flexibility is just nice. Yeah, didn't think about that when we talked about it last.
I have one last quick question. Are we still receiving any revenue from school district IGAs? School district IGAs.
I know we get the SRO. They pay for halftime for both SROs. I mean, that's,
So that's under an IGA, okay.
For both of them?
Yeah,
Because the bond went through, not bond?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
levy.
yep, so that was factored in the police budget, paying for 50% of the two officers' costs.
No other discussion on general fund, I'd move to adjourn.
So there is a open motion to adjourn that's been moved and seconded
All right.
previously, so we're ready for it.
All right. I adjourn this meeting.
Good. Yeah, so you have to vote because there was a motion and a second to do it.
Oh, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Can we stay another hour?
You can.
I totally would have.